2, and stop. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, center. Hands up here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's bend down. 1, 2, 3. Up. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, over the head. 1, 2, 3. Over the side, over the other side. 1, 2, 3. Hands here. Deep breathing. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And down. Okay, so that helps you. Let's move up. Move up. 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 So push forward and up and push. So we can push step and step. So to get your legs kind of working, stretch. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so get your legs working there. Okay, now we're going to work the sliding step. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn. 1, 2, 3, 4. Work this golden cockerel. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Step up. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So any of these movements can be done as a unit. So you have to practice the postures now that you've got the sequence down, and sort of get your spatialness, your body positioning, and the coordination, working together. So when we move, even if we don't have a sword in the hand, if we practice shifting, stepping, stepping, and stepping, will get you walking to the corner. Because really, back to basic, center line, 45-degree corners. So if I'm here, I step this way. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you really have the two corners. If I push to the corner, I can slice to the side. Still 90 degree. Find this position, go to the corner, 90 degrees. Okay, so that's how you kind of define your direction of footwork. So even though we start the form off and we have this 90 degree, we're going over there, then I'm going towards you, then I'm going to this corner. So the relative position is really within this realm of this 90-degree corner position, which really is 45 degrees on each side. So if you can keep that idea in your head, then whenever you move, if you go outside of the 45-degree line, you're probably heading in the wrong direction. So this will give you some perspective. I mean, if I want to chop there, I step here, then my chop is over there. So we have a movement like that. That's in that corner, and this hand is like that. That's that posture. Now, because directly in front of me in the camera, I have this position. That's 45 degrees to there. I drop my hand, and I switch my feet, and I poke. So between this and this, this and this is your stab. Between this and this is my turn. So now we have to really pay a lot of attention to the footwork because without the footwork, we really can't map out the form correctly. I mean, footwork is probably one of the challenging things in doing any of these forms. I mean, last night, even with the Kung Fu class, I spent more time on footwork, and we actually worked the Kung Fu Broadsword with better footwork, or at least awareness that the feet are not moving properly. So if you want your feet to be working properly, what do you have to do? Work with your footwork, because there's a method, there's a concept that you have to stay within, and that's really shifting of your weight, avoiding double weightedness, heel-toe relationship, transitioning and stepping, keeping your legs light and nimble, and move through your different stances, setting up your feet first. You know, a lot of times if you're stepping up and you want to go forward again, if you don't pivot this foot out, you're going to end up like this, and then you're going to be compromising your ability to move forward, but then you're actually not able to connect your feet to your hands. So the first thing you do when you step through is shift your weight and then toe out. Allows you to pass through to go to the next stance, pass through to go to the next stance. So that should have been learned during the empty hand stage, learning your traditional forms, whether it's the Tai Chi paradigm form or the long form. You have learned basically the footwork of how to move to corners and how to step. You know, we have the J Lady work shuttle movements that really is footwork taking you in a direction. We have the turns, which we do a lot of in this form. When you go in this direction, and we have to head back in this direction. And then we have the step to the diagonal flying. Now in Tai Chi, we usually have this sort of agile footwork where when we shift the weight and we step, we kind of plant the foot and then step to the next position. So we deliberately drop the weight into that supporting leg, just like we have this footwork, and then we shift and then step. Shift and then step. So the synchronization of the feet and the forward movement have to be controlled and softened. If you don't soften your feet, you're going to be heavy on your feet. And if you don't soften your feet, the heaviness of this is going to make the movement look awkward and kind of uncontrolled, because you're going to be stepping like that, and that's not what the footwork should be. At least in concept, it shouldn't be like that, and the way it looks shouldn't be like that. So if the look approaches a correctness, then the method involved must be closer to what it's supposed to be. I won't say everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be, because it does take some time to at least bring it to the forefront of your thought. Your mind has to really understand this principle. Okay, so let's go through the form, or at least go through the sequence with the mirrors. I think it'll be a little challenging to go in an angle, so I think I'm going to just stay with the the normal way of going through the sequence. And we'll have this mirror over in this corner. Hopefully that's going to work for you. I'm going to start over here and see where it goes. All right. So we open the stance and we begin and we step out. I'm going to do it nice and slow so we can see hands and feet actually have to build a coordination and a timing. And we step up and push. Now here's the corner. Here's the corner, but actually I'm going to that corner relative to the center position that I'm going to be chopping into. And here's the real corner in the square, although corners are relative positions to the direction you're headed in. I don't know if that makes, if that's clear to you, if it makes sense. It's a relative position. So each time you move, you target a direction. So the knee goes up, heel kick. Now, I like to think of vertical and horizontal as some of the ideas that we have that keeps the movements as true as possible. So vertical, horizontal, 45 degrees, and the slant movements would be 45 degrees. But that should have been horizontal, and this is vertical. And now we go to the waist, which is horizontal. And we go down to the poke, which is about 45 degrees. Over the top, which is vertical. Undercut, which is vertical. Undercut, which is vertical. And I poke. And I sit back, horizontal to vertical. Sit back. Slice, footwork, step, 45 degrees. One, over the head, horizontal, horizontal, over the head to horizontal, wrap the body to vertical. Sliding step, heel to toe, turn, cross step. Spin, cross behind. Suspended empty stance. Vertical. Circle over the top and to the chop. That's 45 degrees. Now we spin again. Horizontal low to the knees. Switch your feet. Poke out. 45 degrees. Sit back, turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so we spun around 1, 2, 3. Okay, now we step up, poke. Now we face like this. My feet are square to that corner, so I can poke to that corner. 1. This is parallel to that leg. Then we spin and chop. Horizontal, poke. Neutral, horizontal, 1, 45, lift, shift, shift and step. So that footwork was what we were just talking about. You lift, drop, and then step out to here. This is your diagonal flying. And then the next movement, we sit back to neutral, and then we're going to do the sort of chicken nodding its head. 1, 2, and here's another 45 degrees. Then we're going to turn like this, take this hand, and then chop down. And then from here, we're going to open the stance and divert. So this is slanting down like this. You don't want it way out there, closer to the body. Then we shift the weight, pivot this foot in, and chop. And poke. And here, 1, 2, right? So let's try that again. Go down, chop, and poke, and we're back. Now we go forward, level out and cut to the neck, sit to this direction, and then we go horizontal. Fold my elbow, cut up, sit back. Here's that step again, and then 45 degrees. Square up like this, sort of loosen the grip, bring this parallel to your body, bring it in by pulling the elbow in and thrust out. Go in that direction, pivot the feet, and then poke. Drop the elbow, step to the corner or to the side, switch the hands, go to this side, there's your side there. That was 90 degrees to that. Then we're going to go back to that side. Then we're going to go right where we started from in the beginning, split that in half. Okay, so we're here. 1. Now this has to come like this as you turn your body. So you can step. 2. Now I'm going to spin to open my stance and chop. Poke. Waist, shift, step. Find your center, lift your knee. 1, 2, 3. There's your cross step. I'm going to cut under the leg as it kicks up. 1, 2. Bring the sword here before you shift your weight, and then drop your sword as you cross behind. That allows me to spin, and I end up going over the head like I'm swinging a baseball bat with my left hand. Switch the hands, sit back, and back to diagonal flying. And we're here. 1, over the side, horizontal, horizontal, over the head, horizontal. 1, okay, 2, 3, and 4. Bring the sword to here. That's right on that upper arm piece. Turn, just like in the beginning, brush knee, shift your weight, adjust this foot, shift your weight, see the parallel now. Bring this foot, sword to here. 1, toes in line, and straighten. So you can see, it's very methodical to go from one position to the next. And when we're first learning it, it's just kind of copying the hand movements. But without the leg movements, you can't define the direction. And then how do you build the coordination? If you want to build upper-lower coordination, the hands and the legs have to sync up. If they're synchronized and they're working, in relationships, then what's going on above, you have to know. What goes on below, you have to know, which means your upper and lower appendages. And then you have to tie that in somehow, so it has to be connected through your body. And your body is what has to control that relationship. So the relationship is not only the look of the posture, the ending movements when you finish. So there's timing involved in getting the two segments of your body working from the top to the bottom. And then you can't move the top and bottom without actually connecting it to your middle piece, which is your torso. And that kind of gives you the idea that coordination is essential to build a certain look. And then footwork. Footwork is agility, shifting of weight, moving into a stance, and creating this kind of imagery, and then at the same time building a certain amount of principles. I talk a lot about the vertical, the horizontal, the obliques. Even though we go like this and we go over and it's a circle, you still need to really define the direction of your movement. So this is like this. Okay, we don't really slice up at an angle like this. We don't really cut in those directions, but we do cut in those directions on a downside. Chopping is best in its vertical plane. Slicing up is in its vertical plane, just like this is in neutral. I call it neutral, elbow down. This is approaching neutral, but you have to keep the circle in line with the body as close as your center line as you can. And the only way to really accomplish that is if you turn your shoulders and twist your spine. Obviously the spine, the hip, and the shoulders actually become a coordinated unit. So, when one moves, it all moves theoretically, because sometimes you try to move one part and the rest of it doesn't move. So that's something that's, really, because it's a movement, if it doesn't move, it doesn't know how to move, or at least it's not wired to move. So the thing is, everything that I talk about, whether it's Tai Chi, empty form, empty hand form, apparatus, apparatus is weaponry. If you really don't integrate the body, you really can't get the direction of movement to happen. So really it's those concepts of how we can get our body to work together that's important. So footwork really is dictated by where your feet are pointing. Leg work is how you bend your knees, relax your ankles and hips. And then what do you do with this? A lot of times it's a lot easier, with a weapon, because you can see that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. If I go like this, it's a figure eight. But if you put a spatula in your hand and you're spreading something, or even putting, what do you call that? Stuff that I don't actually eat. It's the frosting on a cake. You see you take that little spatula and you kind of put it on and spread it, and you make it nice and neat. It's like spreading butter. And the movement is this, to kind of blend it in, and then when you smooth it out, the gentleness and the texture that you create, whether it's a wave or whatever you're developing. So the sword is exactly the same. When you slice, we chop in the vertical is most efficient because you're dropping. This is dropping. This is dropping. They're all downward movements, because downward movements has a mechanical advantage because you're using gravity. So gravity is actually working with you in this case. Why don't we chop way out there? Because gravity is not working for you, it's working against you. And what it's doing is, the longer you reach out, the further you go away from the body, the less strength you have in here. So it requires more strength, but you have less leverage. So on a mechanical side, when you're using your sword, or you're using whatever apparatus you're using, the further you go away from your body, the harder it is to control. And the more strength you need. So when you start to use more strength, you start to develop more conflict. And the conflict is that you can't change directions as easily, and you can't maneuver out of that position without doing something abrupt, which is getting your body back into centered, moving your center back to mass, center of mass back to a position. So moving back into your stance will be more challenging. Just like when you go into downward posture, when you deflect down, it's more challenging to get up. So that's why you need a certain amount of strength in the leg, because while you're trying to lift your body weight, you forget about the sword. So these are all things that maybe you don't think about. So I think it through for you to give you, the insight of what, I think you may be misinterpreting or misunderstanding based on the fact that your body doesn't recognize. Motor skill is learned, and motor skill, like we were talking about earlier, that if you want your back to turn, you have to teach your back to turn, because if it's not wired for that specific action, you have to do it. And it's pretty amazing that if you start to do it a little bit, then the frequency of that will start to build those little connections that allow that to happen. But it does happen really well. It really happens as a course of learning, but your body's conflicts, which is the resistance to let that happen, which is a habit, has to be severed or broken. You have to break that habit, and that's really severing the connections that make it rigid. So there is there's more than learning there. There's actually deleting, getting rid of it. So that's the challenge for a lot of people that have, disciplines that have been learned over time that cause these conflicts. And if I get into a simplest thing to think about is, when you go into a sit-up or a plank position where you kind of hold your body pretty rigid, it's great for rigidity. It's great for body straightening and maybe alignment, if you think that's great alignment, to keep the musculature like this, and it keeps you in those positions. But turning's different. Turning is that you release the two sides in a balanced way. They complement each other, compensate for and avoiding that rigidity. Now, sometimes you have to be rigid. I mean, if you're picking up, a 50-pound or whatever it is in front of you, you have to be rigid. And then if you bring it over there, you end up doing that. That's why, you need certain amount of strength, but that lifting really creates some stiffness. Now, if you have a 50 or 100 pounds here, the tendency to turn your waist like this and turn your waist like this is not going to happen, because your back really won't like that if you're not conditioned for that. Now, if you're picking up 100 pounds and you're turning just the waist all the time, then you'll be able to do that. So that's why training is very specific. When you train for something, you have to understand that when you move, look for the most efficient way of doing it, and the use of the least amount of strength. So that's really what Tai Chi is about. So it's called use your will and not strength. Yong yi put yong let. So yong yi is mind intent, or sort of the idea of mind over matter. It will happen because your thought says to do that. But that's just your mind. Your body doesn't cooperate. So you have to learn to move your body. So when we go through the form, we have to learn to, and we learn this actually from our fist form, because we learn to sink, we learn to shift, and we learn to move our hands like this. Now, to give you a sample of what happens with your hands, we learn the form 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 1, as a grass is power hill. So we're here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what we're doing with the sword. But the thing is, we have to go through the same process. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. So what I did was a breakdown of the movements as if it was frames. Like you're taking a photograph, you get an image. In between transitions, like in video, are frames per second. So you pick the frames that you want. Those are the interim positions that take you into a position. The accuracy of those interim positions and the frame that you capture is the position that you're looking for when you're running through your movements. Does that happen like that? No, it doesn't happen like that, because first you have to know the movement. You have to go through the timing mechanism and the phasing throughout each of the postures and each of the transitions, and your body will develop a knowing. It knows because you've gone through this process of forming those positions. So it is building a program. Now, those phasing of movements is something that you build, and it happens as a course of understanding. I never practiced it like that. I can show it like that. And I can show it like that because it's in my system. I know that this is what has to happen. So I use it to show you as a teaching tool so that you understand. So I think you can relate to what frames per second is relative to your movement. And by understanding that, you can actually go back and try to dissect it and recreate some of those interim positions with the connection with the movement, and then you'll see that your body will evolve. And in fact, that's how a robot kind of moves, because you have to know and program the interim positions for that that to happen. So, programming using a computer to do these type of movements would be a tremendous amount of information, and it would take a long, long time to do even a piece of the Tai Chi form with a robot, because you'd have to have so much going on in every single piece of your body. So the amazing thing is that we can do this just by watching, doing, and developing understanding. So how complex and how amazing is our brain to be able to do that? I think, it's truly, a principle and phenomena that that the human body has an unlimited amount of ability to tap into all this information that you're learning in Tai Chi, or even in the different styles that I teach. They're all different, but yet we all learn it in the same procedure. We go through the motions, we pick it up, and you take the information that's being fed to you. So As a teacher, I've gone through a lot of the experience because of the decades and decades and decades of experience. And that's all it is. It's experience. And the experience and the insight that I pull together from my experience is how and what I teach. So, there is a method to the madness, as I say, but the thing is, it's just a course of a natural progression, and I've discovered the learning process, or at least not discovered it, but at least enhanced the idea of what we need to do. And we all learn like this, and the information I feed you is for your training, because it would take you a long time to discover what I just told you, mainly because you have to go through the trial and error and the deciphering of everything that you see. So from the body's ability, flexibility, strength, your proprioception, your strengths and weaknesses of all the things that we're talking about, because everyone is different, you really have to tap into the way you learn and your understanding. So all of this becomes relevant to improving your skill level. And ultimately, what does that do? It makes you into a more insightful human being. You be much more nimble and agile throughout life. You're going to be more functional and have better ability. And